I belong to a bunch of homesteading Facebook groups, and this question caught my attention. I'm going to read it verbatim. A woman asked, I am a huge neat freak and love staying organized. How do y'all keep track of everything? If you bake bread, how do you remember to make more? How do you keep track of pantry items, food storage, animals, and all the other things that need your attention? I was like, okay, I love these kinds of questions because I want to learn. I always want to learn. I thought, okay, this is going to be good. I was expecting everyone to share their favorite planner or their favorite system, app, spreadsheet, whatever. Instead, the comments were very different and kind of funny. One person said, I keep it all in my head. It's very scary in there. Another said, plans are more like suggestions. Someone else wrote, homesteading will whip the OCD right out of you. I laughed because every one of those comments is true. But after I finished reading through them, I realized something. This wasn't a real conversation about organization. This was a conversation about how different people manage the life that they've built. If you're new here, welcome to the Joyfully Prepared podcast. I'm Wendy Bergen, your host. And this podcast is where we take everyday questions about homesteading, preparedness, and creating a peaceful home and turn them into practical ideas that help you make better decisions. My goal isn't to help you do more. No, it's to help you build a life that's a little more peaceful, one simple step at a time. As I read through all those comments, I realized that most of us fit into one of a few different ways of managing our homestead. At first, it looked like everyone disagreed, but they really didn't. Each person was describing a system that worked for their own life. Someone living alone has different needs than a family with 6 children. Someone raising goat manages differently than someone with a backyard garden. Someone working full time outside the home has different routines than someone who's retired. There isn't one perfect organization system. There are lots of good systems. So, as I thought about these comments, I realized most of us fit into one of a few different styles. The first one is the one I call the memory manager. This is mostly me. And I mean, I'm going to say this and then we can just kind of laugh, but I always thought there was something a little wrong with me because I would just have things in my head. I've tried all the planners, I've tried all the spreadsheets, I've done this, I've done that. Nothing really ever works for me outside of my brain. And it is very scary in there. I know when we're down to our last loaf of bread. I know when we're getting low on flour. I know when the chicken feed needs to be replaced. I know when it's probably time to make another batch of elderberry syrup. I do not have an incredible memory. I remember once, I think we were in the middle of the no, I just had a baby. That's what it was. So it's been a while ago. I had had a baby and I ran out of dish detergent. I didn't have any dish detergent. And I think I wrote on my Facebook something like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe like food storage failed me," or I don't remember what it was, but something about I don't have any dish detergent. And this lovely woman from my church, she brought up a giant bottle of Dawn dish detergent, like the super industrial size one that you get from Sam's Club. She brought that to me the next morning. How sweet was that? So I have had things like that happen. Oh my gosh, I ran out of butter during the lockdowns during COVID. I ran out of butter. That's worse than running out of dish detergent as far as I'm concerned. So I had to go and there was no butter to be found. That was the other big deal. Like I went to this was in New Jersey, so I went to ShopRite and Sam's Club. You couldn't find butter. Finally, I found some at Aldi, I think. But I a couple times my brain has failed. Now maybe that'll get worse the older I get, I don't know, but so far so good. Yeah, it's a lot going on inside of there, but, that's just kind of the way it goes. Sometimes I do write things down. I have a whiteboard here in my office, and I'll write things on there to jog my memory about certain things. My daughter will write sweet notes on there right now. It says, "I love my mommy." Isn't that sweet? She's 16. That's very sweet. So I do like write a few things on there that my brain keeps forgetting during the day. So sometimes after a while, it needs to go on the whiteboard. However, that I don't know how many of y'all do that, like have the brain like I have. And like I said, I'm not saying that it's pretty inside there. It's very scary. There's a lot going on in there. The visual person, the visual manager, they have to see it all, right? They have beautiful whiteboards. There's the ones that journal and like make all the pretty things inside their journal. They make magnetic grocery lists, freezer inventories, sticky notes. If they can't see it, it probably doesn't exist. I truly admire these people. I'm not a visual learner, but that's not the way I manage things is through visual. I have children who are like that, and that was very helpful for them. So I really and I love the visual managers because they make everything so pretty. They just make it so pretty. They always seem to know exactly what's happening because they have a place for everything. So that's super cool. The planner, the planner manager. Then there are the spreadsheet people. And again, I love the spreadsheet people. My husband is a spreadsheet person. He loves a good spreadsheet. He has been known to stay up into the wee hours of the morning working on a spreadsheet. You know who you are. I have another good friend who's very spreadsheet math oriented when it comes to her food storage. I love that. You know exactly how many jars of green beans you can last year and how long they will last you depending on how many people are in your family. The spreadsheet people, the planner people, I love that. Like I truly love that. I have another mentor and she's very much like that too, and I am not that person. I have started many a spreadsheet, many, and then I forget that I have the spreadsheet for real. I did a pretty good job this last year when we processed our own chickens. I kept a little spreadsheet about how much it cost us to buy the chickens, how much the feed cost. Like I did a good job keeping records of that. That's as far as my little spreadsheet got. I did a podcast episode about the chickens. I don't know which episode that is. I want to say it's like episode 204 or something like that about raising meat chickens. And anyway, but that was my little spreadsheet. And I figured out how much per pound the chicken costs. That's as far as my spreadsheet goes. I even used to be a list writer. Like when I was younger, when I was in my, teens and in my 20s before I got married and had children, I used to write the lists. Man, do you guys write lists? Again, I think you're part of the planner spreadsheet people if you're a list writer. Seriously. I don't do that anymore. I don't know what happened, but I don't write lists anymore. I keep a little something on my phone here and there, but mostly it stays in my noggin. Now y'all know, those of you who know me in real life, now you know. You know what's wrong with me. The last person, my mom, she's amazing. Well, you already know that. The rhythm manager. They have a rhythm to their week, to their day. My mother does this. They don't need to remember everything because they've built routines and rhythms into their week. For instance, Sunday is bread day. I have my sister, I think she's kind of a rhythm person too. She has her routine on meal prep and she makes bread on Sundays, is one of the days she does it. My mom, the only thing I've carried forth into my adulthood from my mother is my mother's rhythms, I should say my mother's routines, is that I wash my sheets every Monday. That's when my mom washes her sheets, and that's what I've carried into my life. That is it. My mother taught me many things, and she's taught me routines and rhythms, and all I got that stayed with me as far as the rhythms and the routines is wash my sheets on Monday. But they build these routines. So one day is meal prep, another day could be canning. Routine remembers for them. Are you that kind of person? Like you just know that this is coming up and this is what I do on the third Wednesday of the month. I do this. I know a lot of people who do that, and I think it's brilliant. It's not just brilliant, it's very wise because, like I said, the routine remembers. You don't have to keep it all in your noggin or on a spreadsheet. You just have it in your rhythm. Now, that doesn't necessarily account for inventory in your food storage, don't get me wrong, but there is some routine and rhythm built in there. What I was surprised at, even though I do think I am this memory manager, I started to think about it and realized I do have lots of little systems. And I want you to go through and check yourself as well. See how you use these four different types. Every Sunday, our family talks about the coming week. Every evening, we look at tomorrow. We're sitting around watching TV. Okay, what do we have for tomorrow? Where do you go in the morning? What are we doing? Da da da. My daughter has a job now. She's driving on her own now, so we have to take some of that into consideration because we don't have to carry her around, drive her around everywhere now because she can do a lot of this by herself, which is awesome. My husband manages our shared calendar as far as like the tech part of it. I just have to input things correctly and then it works. That has been part of the problem, me. I make most of our meals. I do all the grocery shopping. I maintain the food storage. Around the homestead itself, the chores, I am usually kind of directing what happens next. I'll ask someone to collect the eggs, ask somebody to feed the cats, fill the water buckets. I enjoy doing these things too. I enjoy being out with the animals, talking to them and scratching underneath their little necks and just, telling them how cute they are, stuff like that. But the family does help and as I ask them to. We have to mow the lawn. Our irrigation system my husband put in, it waters the gardens. I have the two food forests. It waters those automatically. So I'm not doing every single thing. I'm just managing the systems that we have here. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I like the way things work around our home. There are improvements that can be made, and those improvements will probably be made, some of them in the wintertime when it's not so dang hot in Florida. So if you come to my house and you see that things are a bit of a mess, it's because it's hot and I don't want to be outside and nobody else does either. So, I think beginners sometimes believe experienced homesteaders remember everything. We don't. We've simply learned what deserves a system. Some things become habits. That's very true, especially when you have animals that you have to take care of them because they depend on you, right? Some things become routine. And I think those kind of come together. Routine and habits can kind of be the same thing. Some things become delegated. If I go out of town, I'm going to need my husband or somebody to come over and help me. Well, my husband does a lot that way. And some things are automated, which makes life so much easier. If I could figure out some other automations, I have great ideas, but there is no technology that supports my ideas yet. Yet. And some things just become second nature after doing them for years. And so we learn. The beginner learns, and I'm still learning even though I've been doing this for a really long time. I remember when I was younger, my dad had his own private airplane, and one of the businesses that he attached to that plane was flying banners over the University of Virginia football games. And so it was a family business. We would build the banners ourselves. We had an inventory of letters and rods and things. We would build the banners ourselves, and he had contracts with local businesses, and he flew the plane, and we took care of everything on the ground. And at one point, my dad wasn't able to fly his plane anymore. And so he hired a guy to come in, fly in from, I think, Virginia Beach. And this guy did things a little differently. And my dad said, "Look at that. Look how he's doing that. It's more efficient than the way we did it. It's always good to learn from somebody else." And so we started a different way of taking care of our banners because this guy showed us a better way. And I believe very strongly that homesteading and any skill that you have benefits from watching other people and seeing what other people do. I went and helped this friend on her goat farm a couple weeks ago. She does things a little differently. And I was like, I'm going to do it that way. It was just filling water. I didn't have buckets of water out. I had like this large dish of water and I was refilling it a couple times a day with fresh water. And she just put buckets out and refilled those twice. And it kept longer because the chickens and the goats drink out of it, and it's just a better system now, and it doesn't take me any time to do it, and it's perfect. So just one little tweak has made homesteading just a little bit easier for me. I've been watching a ton of quilting videos because I'm learning how to quilt and I'm learning from people who know things better than me. I'm like, oh, I do it that way. That's why you have mentors. That's why you listen to podcasts. That's why you're out there trying to tweak it so you don't have to learn the long, I'm not going to say the hard way, but maybe the longer way, right? One of the things that I also going back to this Facebook discussion was that nobody had the same answer. Nobody said, oh, get this app. Oh, do it this way. One woman has children with special needs. Another lives alone. One loves to bake bread. Another would rather trade vegetables with a neighbor for the neighbor to bake bread for her. One gardens simply because she loves it. Another said baking bread nourishes her soul, but gardening doesn't. I absolutely loved that because it reminded me there isn't one right way to homestead. There isn't one perfect planner, one perfect app. There isn't one perfect organization system. There's only the system that fits you, your family, and your life. That's the system. And I think that's really what preparedness is. Preparedness isn't perfection. No, no, I am the poster child for that. Preparedness is not perfection. Preparedness is peace. It's creating enough little systems that your life feels calmer, that tomorrow is just a little easier than today. It's just one habit at a time. And the habits build into routines and the routines build into systems. See how that works? And you're doing that. You've already done that. If you've made it to adulthood, you've already done this. You had to have systems to get you to this far, right? Okay, so here's my challenge for you this week. Instead of trying to organize your entire homestead this week, which is impossible, I'd like you to do something a little different. I'd like you to figure out which kind of homestead manager you are. There isn't a wrong answer. In fact, your natural way of thinking is probably one of your greatest strengths. If you're a memory manager, lean into routines and habits. Trust the things you've done often enough that they've become second nature, and use a simple reminder for the unusual tasks, like a whiteboard or a note on your phone. If you're a visual manager, don't fight it, man. Use your whiteboards, your sticky notes, freezer inventory, and grocery lists. If seeing it helps you remember it, that's a strength, 100%. If you're a planner, keep planning, sister. Keep on planning. Your spreadsheets, calendars, inventory sheets bring order and peace. They help you stay ahead instead of constantly catching up. I wish I was like you. If you're a rhythm manager, keep building the routines. When certain tasks happen on the same day, every week, or every month, you don't have to spend energy deciding when to do them. You're building in memory. I need to be more like you, like my mom, right? And maybe, like me, you're just a little bit of several of those. The goal isn't to become someone else. Heck to the no. No way, man. The goal is to recognize the strengths that God has already given you and build simple systems that support the life you're creating. When we stop comparing ourselves to everyone else's systems and start building one that fits our own family, homesteading becomes a lot more peaceful. So this week, don't try to change who you are. Celebrate how you're wired, then build one system that works with your strengths instead of against them. Okay, here's a little help getting started. If today's episode made you realize you'd like to be a little bit more organized, but without making life more complicated, I have something that might help. One of the systems that has helped me the most over the years is meal planning around the food we already have. And that's why I created my food storage meal planning system. It's a collection of simple worksheets that help you plan meals using the food you already store, reduce waste, and take some of the stress out of answering the daily question, what's for dinner? You can download it through the link in my show notes, and it'll also get you on my email list where I share more ideas to help you build a peaceful, prepared home. Now, I have to ask, even though you haven't done the challenge, what do you think? What kind of homestead manager are you? A memory manager, a visual manager, a planner, or a rhythm manager? Or are you a little bit of each? I would love to know. Come over to Facebook, to my Facebook group, Joyfully Prepared, or on my YouTube channel. I'd love for you to subscribe. It is Homesteading Made Simple, and leave a comment. I'd love to know what kind of manager you think you are. I always enjoy hearing how different people make their homesteads work because I end up learning from you and we're learning and teaching each other and helping. Is that awesome? I think that's awesome. Remember, preparedness isn't about doing everything, it's about building one simple system at a time. I love you. Enjoy your day.